Right. Morning, everybody. So I'm James Banks. I head up the membership department at FCIAT. I'm going to run through this presentation on how you could potentially apply to become a fellow member of FCIAT. Jonathan, who's just introduced himself, is one of the fellow panel assessors, and he's been instrumental in the development and the evolution of this process and the criteria. And he will chip in after myself once I've presented. But ultimately, he's giving an idea of how you could potentially go about applying. So all of you in the room, as far as I'm aware, are chartered members of FCIAT. So that means you are eligible to apply for recognition as a fellow member with the Institute. So just for clarification, this is the structure, how it sits. As you can see, fellow is a complementary class of membership that sits alongside your professional status of being a chartered architectural technologist. So it's not a qualification above. It's a complementary designation that goes with you being chartered member of FCIAT. So as it stands, it's only chartered members that can apply for this recognition, and it's awarded for one of three reasons: significant contribution to architectural technology, excellence in architectural technology, or both. So significant contribution to and excellence in, and the panel will determine which of those one of three options as to why they have bestowed fellow membership in the FCIAT designation on an individual that would apply. The only way to apply it is through the website, and in the invite to this presentation I did send you the link to the FAQs around applying for fellow and to the online application form. And all being well, if you were to meet the requirements, then the way we would like you to describe yourself is as listed at the bottom of the slide there, i.e. Lorraine McCall, switching your MCIAT designation for that of FCIAT, but wherever possible and relevant, always promoting your professional qualification of being a chartered architectural technologist. So what are the criteria that you need to demonstrate to become a fellow member? My recommendation is that you would directly address each of these four areas within your submission. Because it's an online application process, I personally would set up a Word document and start constituting and formulating my written submission against the criteria before I'd cut and paste that directly into the online application form. So, word limit. The maximum word limit on the form is 1,650 words within the actual body of the text. The form will not let you put in any more words. So that's the most amount of words you're allowed to use. If you can convey and demonstrate, i.e. the context of your situation, and that aspect should be a brief summary about you as an individual and your activity within architectural technology. You know, at that point, we don't need to know where you've worked, how long you've worked at different places, and a potted history of your career. Focusing on, this is where I am now, these are my main activities and functions, and this is the level to which I'm performing that should support my application for fellow member. So I would say context should be a concise, succinct summary, potentially 2 or 3 sentences. Now, the main body of your application should address as to whether you're applying or addressing significant contribution and or excellence. So the ways in which you could do that, you could say why you're applying, in what areas you've contributed significantly and what areas you've achieved excellence, when, how, and in which sphere of architectural technology was achieved. So all of you will have slightly different experiences, slightly different roles and functions, and it's up to you to pitch your application accordingly. And again, this significant contribution and excellence, in my view, should be taking up a large percentage of your written words. And moreover, which goes hand in hand, is if you're doing something significant or of excellence, then it will no doubt have had an impact. So the impact needs to be conveyed as to what you've done and the change, effect or influence that your contribution or excellence has had, the scope of its impact. So has it been in the project delivery process? Has it been within your organisation? Has it been at a local level? Has it been at a national level? Has it been at an international or global level? Ways to think about demonstrating these points and terminologies you might understand. It's about going over and above your standard roles and functions. Okay, so it's about raising the bar. It's about pushing the boundaries. It's about having that wider ripple effect of the impact of what you've instigated as an architectural technology professional to have that effect and implement change and impact around significance or excellence of what you've done. So significance, excellence and impact really should take the vast majority of your words up within your 1,650 words as a maximum. And then finally, as a summary, you need to convey the value of fellow membership to you, and how would you use this to contribute further to architectural technology and or FCIAT. So this really should be an outwardly looking summary at the end, saying how you're going to continue to push architectural technology to the forefront and give it its rightful position within industry. So when you're looking at the wording, you know, the start and the end should be concise and succinct, and the main body of text or wording should be utilized for contribution, excellence, and impact based on the experience that I've had with this process. Now, there is no need specifically for supporting documentary evidence, okay? You can attain fellow membership based on your evidential statement, which addresses the criteria. Now, if you have supporting documentation or evidence of something, i.e. winning an award and the impact of winning that award had, then you can add that in the supporting documentary evidence. So there is a box below the word aspect of the form where you can provide supporting documents. You know, if you had an article published in the magazine or a research paper published, again, you might want to provide a link to that website or that article so that it adds value to your written narrative. My general view is, in most instances, you might want a maximum 2, 3, or 4 bits of supporting documentation which might support your additional text. But, you know, we don't need to see the same amount of evidence that we saw in your portfolio for you to qualify as a chartered architectural technologist, as an example. And we've seen your technical capabilities and your proficiency as a chartered member, so we don't need to see that. We need to see you conveying that impact, that significance, the excellence of what you've done. There's no interview to become a fellow member. It's literally the online application process only. Assuming that you meet the criteria, then you will be awarded the FCIAT designation, as I alluded to. As I mentioned, it's not a higher level of qualification. I know some other institutes, i.e. the CIOB example, say FCIOB is a higher level than MCIOB. We say the two of being a chartered architect and a fellow member complement one another as per the descriptor we recommend. So the cost, so it's £300 to submit your fellow application. You will get 3 opportunities to submit and meet the criteria. So it might be the fact that, like with Jonathan and his colleagues on the fellow panel, look at it. Hopefully they award a pass. We'll invite you to upgrade to fellow. There's a £75 additional subscription to pay this year and every year thereafter. So you're looking somewhere in the region of £360 to be a fellow member. But we could give you a first deferral, so we might ask for further clarification or additional evidence to back up one of your statements that you've said, or you to convey the impact of your significant contribution. And we can go through that process, and you can resubmit and revise for 3 opportunities. So we're quite fair, and we try and steer you and give you guidance as to what we need to see to enable you to meet that criteria. But, you know, once you achieve that, you know, that will demonstrate your eminence and distinction within architectural technology. A lot of the other queries are covered within the FAQs, which can be found on the website or on this link there. And obviously all of you have sort of looked into it already, so you've half got an interest. I would say it's achievable for all of you, but it's how you pitch and word your application to demonstrate your roles and your experiences and how it goes over and above your standard roles and functions, and how you raise the bar, you push the boundaries, you have that ripple effect, using architectural technology as the benchmark to push forward and drive industry in the direction of excellence or significance. I think that's pretty much all I was really going to cover in regards to giving you an overview. I'm sure Jonathan will happily chip in. You know, I'm happy to look at a draft fellow application before you potentially put it into the online application form. That's something we can offer as well, because I've pretty much seen every fellow application that's come in today. And at the moment, there's 70 fellows that have achieved it, and there's 15 in process. But some have been given a first deferral or a second deferral, and they've been asked to go back and really think about how they convey their application. But it's up to you on how you want to pitch it and how you word it. And I would also veer on the side of quality over quantity. Okay, think if you've got 2 or 3 things of significance or excellence you want to put in, then weight them in your head and start talking about number 1. And if you just use up all your words talking about number 1, then that's not an issue. If you have 10 things and then you sort of scattergun it and talk a little bit about this and a little bit about that, you're not really giving us that rich narrative and that deep dive that we need to see from you. So you should really be focusing in on, these are the things I may talk about. Let me write about number 1. If I've got words for the second most significant thing or excellent thing I've done, let me bring that in, and 3, and so on. But, you know, if you use up all your words for 1 or 2 aspects or strands, then that is also acceptable to meet the criteria. So I don't know if this stage, Jonathan, if you want to come in and add to that before we sort of open it up to the floor.
Well, as always, you've described it quite well. I think from an assessor's point of view, we are picking up on a kind of argument or a narrative that you've created for the 4 categories. But the 2 categories that we do really focus on is the significant contribution and/or excellence, and is the first one, and the second one is the impact, and that has to be fairly clear. And we're not looking for the day-to-day activities that you do. It's the additional accolades that you've got. On the same note, we're definitely after a narrative that you have, not a list of awards or a list of people you've presented to, or whatever it may be. You can provide that as additional evidence if needs be, but in the application itself, it's more about the narrative and the story that you tell about your career. And as James has alluded to, it that could occur to somebody who's 3, 4, 5 years in practice or 50 years in practice. It's open doors in that regards. I will say that the applications so far that I've seen, I haven't seen every single one of them, but they're absolutely astounding. Put my talents to shame in most instances. So don't be shy about shouting out about your influences and your impact that you've had, and do it concisely. Would be my kind of viewpoint. You don't need to waffle on too much. It's a task in itself, but I think if you consider this over and above your charter membership, we're not reviewing any of your work, we're not reviewing projects that you've done or technical details that you've created. The charter membership, you're still a chartered member, and the fellowship is what you've done on top of that, the kind of impact, like I say, the impact, the contribution you've had from your charter membership status. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to try. I mean, like, winning awards is commendable, and you know, if you were a winner of an AT award, that's great. But what's been the ripple effect of you winning that award? What's been the impact of you winning that award? You know, have you as a practice implemented this as a standard model of excellence, which you then engage further with a project delivery team, or of your clients taken forward those attributes of excellence and implemented that into their organisational structure if they're working on various different schemes? You know, so you know, awards are noteworthy. Or, you know, example, being on grand designs is noteworthy. But we've all seen some grand designs projects that actually go over budget and take forever to go through the process. So it's about showing that roadmap, but that impact and significance of excellence of what you've done, and showing that ripple effect that it has. Instead of just winning an award, well, what was the follow-up from that? How did you take that forward, and how did you convey and instigate excellence? But I think we're just opening it up to the floor. So I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand or write anything in the chat box. You know, we're quite happy to just take any questions from the floor, really. Silence. Have we? Oh, there we go. Mio.
Hi, good morning. I'm interested in terms of the applications you're getting. Are the majority of them from architectural technologists working in architects' practice, or are you getting many from people working in main contracting?
I think it's everything. So it's academia, it's research, it's, you know, specialisms such as BIM, fire, historic building conservation. Yeah, there's traditional architectural practice technologists as well. It's the full gambit, you know, it's a broad church, and it's up to each individual to put their own spin on it. And we see all of your applications being just as valuable as another. So, you know, it's about how you pitch your application. You're the artist, you're going to paint your story, you're going to tell us why and convey your experiences and what you've done, and we will just take that at face value. We're not going to use your sphere as working against you in any way, shape or form. We see all spheres just as valuable as one another, because you're flying that flag for architectural technology, and you're pushing the boundaries, and you're doing things of significance, excellence, and having an impact.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a huge crossover, and that makes part of the reading really enjoyable. To be honest, it's definitely not just architectural practice, but if it is architectural practice, it's over and above. It's mentoring, taking young members through the firm, engaging with CIAT, networking with CIAT, local groups, or have an influence on local, national or international standards of whatever sort, or publication as well, dissemination of your work within that practice. But yeah, we've had loads. We had an arbitration lawyer that was an AT, and that was a fantastic application. I'm learning stuff. Never mind anything else. It's yeah, it's all across the board. It's fantastic to see what the subject field and the technologists, what they get into.
Yeah, Carla's got her hand up.
Yeah, it's just a quick one. James, you said you'd be happy to read drafts. Would that be to send them to you direct by email?
Yeah, just send it over by email. All I could say, obviously not being an architectural technology professional myself and not being an assessor, is in my opinion, that appears to address the criteria, or I might provide some comments or potentially some proposed rewording, should we say. But it wouldn't be my decision at the end of the day. It would be the likes of Jonathan and his fellow panel assessors. But, you know, please use the benchmark or the framework of what's listed on this slide as the basis of what you need to cover, and realise that the top and tail, the context and the value, should be quite a concise summary, and really you should be using your wordings against significance, excellence and impact.
Thanks.
I mean, has anyone got any questions? I know there's a couple of people in this room that have probably been nominated or won some CIAT awards, so you know that's one thing you could consider talking about. But again, I'd maybe jot 3, 4 or 5 things down, and then in your mind put a weighting around which ones best prove the criteria and meet the points, and then you start writing about those and see where your wording gets to. You know, if you could do it in 1,000 words, that's great. That's fine. You don't have to write 1,650 words, but I think you really struggle to doing anything less than 1,000 words based on my experience. You know, we have had some people doing 400 words, and it's just got sent back to me to say, you know, really, you know, give it the respect it deserves. Have a look at this and reconstitute your wordings. But I said it needs to be over and above your standard roles and functions. So, you know, partner in the practice, going to get new business, and some of those things is just standard stuff. We want to see that raising the bar and taking AT to the next level, really, for this accolade. I mean, if you don't want to ask a question verbally, you can always put something in the chat box if you're more comfortable with that. And it might be the fact that this is more achievable more quickly for some of you, and for others of you, it might be something in an aspirational achievement to attain in a period of time that you work towards. That is really for you to decide. And, you know, as Jonathan said, you only need to be a chartered member. You don't need to be a chartered member for 10 years, 20 years. And it's not just given for longevity of service, it's done upon meeting the criteria. So there's a value to being bestowed fellow membership in the FCIAT designation. We must have covered it all, Jonathan, then, I guess.
I think so.
Yeah, so everyone's got my email address anyway. What we're not providing is exemplars. Okay, because it's so broad and it's so varying, we don't potentially want to put someone off when they look at an application. Like Jonathan said, he's seen some that have just been, in his opinion, you know, eye-opening and amazing. And some people might read that and it might put them off. So what we're saying is, because it's so diverse and it's so about you need to just look at the application and put your own words down, and don't necessarily get put off or missteered by how someone else has done it. We're leaving it that at the moment we're not going to provide exemplars because it's so varied, it's so wide ranging. It's up to you to basically be the artist and paint that picture and tell us that story so that we can make a judgment. And we think it's fairest that you do that with your best interpretation of the criteria. Obviously, if you get a first deferral or a second deferral and you're not sure what we might want to see from you, then at that point, obviously, we could probably put you in contact with someone who could potentially have a quick conversation with you to give you a steer of things to think about. You see what I mean? So we won't just say, fail, you're not good enough, don't bother. It'll be like, right, first deferral, these are the things that need to be revised. Maybe you need to delve a bit further into these areas. And then once you've revised that and resubmitted, then we will reconsider your submission. So we will give you sort of guidance and feedback all the way through to try and help you get to that point of achieving it. But bear in mind, there will be that not every charter member that applies will achieve this. because they may not be able to get to the level at this point at the time they apply. It might be that they get a deferral and they come back in 2 to 3 years' time when they might be better placed for it. But if everybody gets it, there's no value in it, if you see what I mean. So there are people that are taking a bit of time to go back and look at their first or second deferral and potentially resubmitting in a more staggered period of time, as opposed to potentially reapplying 2 to 3 weeks later, because you've got what you need, you just haven't quite conveyed it in the right manner, should we say, for the panel to make a judgment. Because ultimately they won't know, they generally won't know of you, or they won't have met you, and all they're getting is your wording and your potentially a few documents to back up your evidence or your statement. Right. Well, if there's no questions, I'm proposing to draw this to a close then. There you go then, short and sweet, just how we like it. Going once, going twice, sold. Right, there we go. I mean, yeah, I spoke to a couple of you already as well. So if you've got any queries, post this. Look at the FAQs on the website if you're not sure we haven't covered anything. And, you know, good luck drafting your application if that's the avenue you decide to go down. But yeah, by all means, set up a Word document with those 4 areas and start constituting your submission. Thank you very much. I shall stop recording.